Hello and welcome back to the channel. The sport has been great so far, so hopefully we can keep it up and keep the videos coming as consistent as they have been so far in the first week. We had quite the weekend of sport just this past weekend, so let's get into the weekend review. First up, we're going to be looking at soccer and the Premier League action this weekend, as the Premier League closed its doors for the final day of the 25-26 season. Arsenal were crowned champions, with Man City coming in second, Manchester United in third, Aston Villa in fourth, and Liverpool in fifth, making up the Champions League spots. Bruno Fernandes broke the assist record that has been going since I think the 03-04 season by Thierry Henry, and got his 21st assist of the season away to Brighton on Sunday, even though it's been kind of a bit controversial. People think that it was actually an own goal, so the assist shouldn't have counted, but I think a lot of the graphics by so many different Premier League and Sky Sports social media teams have been made up to in the hope that he did get the 21st assist. So I think taking them down now would be a bit of a waste, so I don't see them taking the assist off him anytime soon. Also on the final day, we had obviously races as well for Europe spots, and Sunderland, Brighton and Bournemouth made up the final spots for Europe. It's Sunderland's first year back in the Premier League this year in 9 years, and they've managed to qualify for the Europa League. They beat Chelsea at Stadium Light 2-1 yesterday, so an absolutely brilliant day for Sunderland and a brilliant season overall. Brentford missed out. Brentford could have qualified, I think, for the Europa League, but ended up missing out. Ouattara missed a sitter of a header late on in Anfield that could have sent Keith Andrews' side to Europe. Keith Andrews has had a great year at Brentford so far, so it's going to be onwards and upwards for him. In the other side then, the Premier League, Spurs avoided the drop as they beat Everton, and West Ham did win against Leeds, but it wasn't enough obviously with the other results in London, so they end a 13-year stint in the Premier League. The Championship is going to be unreal next season. I think 17 of the 24 teams have been in the Premier League in the last 16 years or so. Some great fixtures to look out there, so it actually looks like a more competitive Championship next season than ever before. Other soccer then this weekend, we had the Scottish Cup final where Celtic did pick up their double, winning 3-1 against Dunfermline. Martin O'Neill more than likely signing off now with a double win, which was unreal for him, and himself and former Celtic player under O'Neill and manager Neil Lennon shared a nice moment with Martin O'Neill raising his arm up in the air after the final whistle. In the German Cup final, Bayern Munich beat Stuttgart 3-0 thanks to a hat-trick from Harry Kane. Vincent Kompany gets his first double with Bayern Munich, and Harry Kane finished the season on 61 goals going into this summer's World Cup. Harry Kane finished up the season on 61 goals going into this summer's World Cup in red-hot form. It kind of feels like because Bayern Munich never qualified for the Champions League that he might not even get a shoe-in for the Ballon d'Or. I know it's dependent obviously on how England do in the World Cup as well, but there hasn't really been any sort of a mention for Harry Kane in the Ballon d'Or for this year, and I think 61 goals in a season is quite impressive, and I think he should be given his flowers for it. Does that mean I think he should get the Ballon d'Or? Maybe not, but he should definitely be in the conversation. On Saturday then, there was a bit of justice done in a way as Hull City were promoted back to the Premier League. Ollie McBurney with a 95th minute winner over Middlesbrough. The Championship legend that is Ollie McBurney obviously was with Sheffield United before, scored plenty of goals for them, and even in the Premier League as well. So yeah, obviously Hull will have a massive sigh of relief over themselves over that win. Bolton obviously then as well got promotion back to League One, and at the time of recording this video the League Two final is still yet to be played. Away from soccer then and onto golf, Wyndham Clark picked up the Byron Nelson in McKinley, Texas, which finished up last night. he takes home the 10.5 million purse after finishing on -11, which was 5 shots clear of the two men in tied second, which one was obviously Scotty Scheffler. Now moving on then to horse racing, we had the Irish Guineas Festival in the Curragh Then on to horse racing, we had the Irish Guineas Festival in the Curragh this weekend on Saturday and Sunday. Gavin Patrick Cromwell had the biggest winner of the weekend, with Invincible Will winning at 22-1 with Jack Carney in the saddle. Aidan O'Brien had the most wins this weekend out of any trainer. He had winners in both the biggest races on the Saturday and Sunday in the Tattersalls 1000 and 2000 guineas. It's the 6th time in his career that he's won both races in the same weekend. Now on to the main event. We are going to be looking at the GAA Championship for the All-Ireland Series, which kicked off in dramatic fashion, to say the least, this weekend. So Galway and Kildare, that went kind of pretty much as expected. Galway winning by 13 points, with Robert Finnerty scoring 1-9 with 2 points from the arc. Cork versus Meath, then I said in the preview that it was going to be a great game, and I wasn't wrong. Won by 3 points in the end, Cork, after turning over an 8-point deficit. They were up by 2 when Colm O'Connellan was probably harshly sent off, but it only kind of drove them on, and they didn't drop their heads and crumble like their Munster final opponents. He was superb in the Munster final, and he was superb again on Saturday, with Stephen Sherlock scoring 14 points with 4 from the arc. Roscommon against Tyrone in Dr. Hyde Park was another good one. Tyrone coming into their own backyard, winning by 3 points. Just like Donegal, they had their time off, dusted themselves down and re-evaluated things, and they played brilliantly on Sunday. Owen McElhone then scoring 1-3, 19 years of age, and his goal late on really drove Tyrone over the line in Roscommon. Another young talent that this country cannot wait to see flourish in our game. Now onto the quiet game in Killarney. As I said previously, for Tyrone against Roscommon, Donegal really used their time off to dust themselves off after that loss in the Ulster quarter-final to Down, and really kind of re-evaluated things, and they came to Kerry in Killarney and they were ready. Kerry were still missing, I suppose, at least 5 key men from last year's championship. So although they were the bookies' favourites, Donegal had a fairly nearly identical team to the one that they had out in that All-Ireland final last July. So whether people kind of like it or not, it was always going to be a tough enough game for Kerry and Killarney, but I did definitely think that they would show up in a better fashion than they did. I also said in that weekend preview that Sean Hurson would probably make a big call. He did make a few big calls, and to be fair, I would say that they were all right. Now, I suppose the first incident really was David Clifford's kind of gesture towards McColgan. Now people are kind of saying, look, he went to elbow him and things like that. I think if you look at enough replays and things like that, I think his arm's high. He'll probably regret the action in general. It was a kind of a silly enough one to do realistically, but I think a yellow card in that moment for David Clifford probably would have stamped out the proceedings that happened later in the half. Look, I think for David Clifford as well, the last 3 or 4 years or so, he kind of goes around to every sort of ground around the country, especially in championship, that you could think of, and he always has defenders kind of pulling and dragging him. I'm not saying it's the right thing for him to do, but eventually the lad was going to snap in some way. I wouldn't even say he snapped realistically, because a proper snap would have been maybe what his wing forward compatriot would have done in the big melee at half time. So look, I think because it wasn't dealt with on the pitch, supposedly there could be a ban for David Clifford. I think a ban for him would be ferociously harsh. But look, we just kind of have to wait and see about that. So as I said, I think if he was given a yellow card, David Clifford, earlier on in the game for that kind of challenge, I think it would have stamped out maybe what happened at the buzzer. Look, He had another shoulder. It was a shoulder. We're not going to kind of go around it edgeways here. I don't think if anybody disagrees that it was a shoulder, I do feel you're wrong. Look, we'll call a spade a spade. The red card totally ruined the game. I think it was a red card. I don't disagree with it, but I think if it was shown to Micheál Burns before both teams had gone in for that break at half time, I think Kerry could have actually maybe reevaluated and planned a bit more. Maybe he knew it was coming when they were coming back out into the pitch. I don't know, but they might have had just an extra plan. I think when both sides came back down and came back out into the pitch, and Jimmy Guinness and Jack O'Connor were called over to the sideline and kind of said, "Look, lads, Hurston kind of told them to get all their staff back into the dugout and clear the sideline." That was fair enough. And then I think when the red card was brandished then for Micheál Burns, you could just see the heads dropping. No, I don't totally agree with it. In terms of the heads dropping, I think Kerry need to be more mentally strong. I know tensions are running high and things like that, but they must have had some idea that was going to happen when they returned for the second half. Now maybe because it wasn't dealt with before half time, as I said, they might have thought that they were going to get away with it and that it would have been brought up, afterwards. But I think it was fairly obvious. Q was burst open. I think it was fairly obvious that the red card was going to be brandished sooner rather than later. So look, they probably should have been a bit more, I suppose, wary of that and kind of dealt accordingly and had a plan for that going into the second half. But instead, Kerry's heads just completely dropped, a bit like the league final in Croke Park, when in and around the time that the jab was done by Michael Murphy. You could see as well that day that Kerry were annoyed by that, and it kind of took over kind of their heads rather than kind of letting their football kind of talk on the pitch. I think they were rattled in a way, and Donegal had a plan, as I said, coming into Killarney. They stuck to it. They had a plan going up in the league final the same day, and they stuck to it, and fair play to Donegal for that. I wasn't a total fan with the kind of running to the referee from all angles by the Donegal players. It kind of felt like you were watching two Spanish sides face off in the Champions League. Look, I think that might sound harsh, but I think the incident with Clifford in the first place obviously annoyed them, which is fair enough. They think that it should have maybe been dealt with on the pitch. And as I said, if he was given a yellow card, I don't think that the big melee at halftime would have happened, because I don't think David Clifford would have actually gone for the shoulder then once the buzzer went. So I think both teams probably would have went down to the tunnel, and we would have avoided a lot of the mess that's basically overriding a good footballing display by Donegal. Like I said, look, I wasn't a fan of it, of the kind of running to the referee and surrounding him and surrounding David Clifford and things like that. It was a very we're going to get him in trouble kind of thing. And like I said, that's kind of in a way of why someone like David Clifford hasn't snapped and has shown his temperament so well in the game. And look, I think if you're going to be dealing with that every week, it's going to be very hard for you to keep your cool all the time. I said the Killarney atmosphere was going to be a big factor, and it was, and especially kind of the reception from Michael Murphy. He didn't get a terrible reception kind of from, say, when the teams were called out and when the game started and all that kind of thing. But it was when, now I haven't seen it on TV, I haven't seen it anywhere, so you can call me out if you want and say that I'm just trying to make a problem out of nothing. But I've heard from many people who were further down in the terrace that he put some bit of a dig into somebody earlier on in the second half, that there was a roar about it and there was a bit of a pushing and shoving then after it. I saw that. So I think the boos for him amplified to the max after that. But at the end of the day, Murphy had the last laugh, didn't he? I think Donegal were very good at getting into the Kerry players' heads. I think, look, the 5-point margin at half-time wasn't the worst, but I think, as I said, the Donegal lads were very good at getting into the Kerry lads' heads, and it was up to Kerry then to keep their cool. I think all they needed to do is just back away. If someone was kind of maybe not happy with a challenge or whatever, I think just try and back away if you could. I know in them circumstances, with obviously the hammering they had above in the league final, they wanted to come into Killarney and maybe regain a bit of self-respect, but a bit less with respect was given then out really for Kerry after that game, which was disappointing to see. I think the disdain maybe for the Donegal players and things like that was kind of overriding in their heads probably from before the game. And I said Jack O'Connor's probably was probably going to call out his players and say, you know, to give Murphy a hit. And I do think genuinely that Kerry were more interested in getting one back on Murphy and Donegal rather than focusing on the issue in hand, which was winning the game in Killarney. And I think that's where a lot of Kerry fans are mostly disappointed. As I said previously, Donegal had a plan from minute 1 to minute 70, and they executed it perfectly. Their football was brilliant. Michael Langan, superb. The goal in the opening couple of minutes really took the wind out of any sort of Kerry sails, especially after they had a goal chance only a minute or so previous. So no, you can only really give massive props to Donegal really, because they kept a cool head when it was needed most. And in fairness, I think if they're able to keep that squad as strong as they can, I know depending on who Kerry need to bring back. I think the problem with Kerry is that if Sean O'Shea comes back or Shane Ryan comes back in the next week or so, they're still after losing a lot of the league, if not all the league, and Munster Championship games, and then obviously this game, coming back into full match fitness into the games that they're really going to count now, is going to be really tough. So look, we'll just have to wait and see with all that. Kerry were in a similar situation against Meath last year when they lost to them in the round robin, and obviously had to go in through another step to get to the All-Ireland instead of going straight to the quarter-final. So look, realistically, it might be the kick in the hole that Kerry need to drive them on a bit, but we'll just have to wait and see. Obviously all these kind of big decisions could be coming out. I don't think we're not going to hear more about the decisions from the higher ups in the GAA about the kind of melee and all these kind of things on Thursday. I think I've seen pundits kind of talking about it, obviously, and the fact that the GAA they kind of just backed themselves into the corner with Gerard Brennan with the 12-week ban, and that was minimal interference. So a lot of the Dublin heads and things like that are going to be calling for a big ban for Jim McGuinness. I think it was no more than the slightest push you could ever think of on Diarmuid O'Connor. I think if we're going to ban a manager 12 weeks for that, I think it's just going to amplify what was already a terrible spectacle, realistically. I think the best thing now is to do is for Micheál Burns to serve his ban, maybe a couple of fines for both county boards, and just leave it at that. Put it in a distant memory, because Donegal had a great day, but it's definitely a day that both sides in a way will want to kind of forget and put behind them, especially Kerry, who obviously now have to go on and go in through a slightly harder position than they would want. So yeah, that was the weekend review. Hope everyone liked it. If you could like and subscribe, that would be great, and share it with people who might not have seen the channel already. Hopefully I'll have another video out this weekend or this coming week, and we'll have a weekend preview as well to come for the action next weekend. So yeah, we'll talk to you later.